Yes. Education is elevation. Welcome to another session of Research Over Me Search. Y'all know what time it is. I don't know, hit the chat. Let me know where y'all coming in from. Shout out to all my people on Substack, especially everybody that's got done watching the live stream I just had with Qasim Rashid. Shout out to everybody on Substack again. Jumping right into it, I just had a triggered memory of something I learned about in college policy debate in our conversation. Apparently, on the Fifth Circuit here in Texas, there was a ruling that allows for the indefinite detention of undocumented people here in Texas. And it reminded me of this debate topic, that I did my last senior year in college, 2014, about presidential war powers. And one of those war powers, the topic was war powers. One of the topic areas of that was about indefinite detention. So for me thinking about indefinite detention, I started thinking about what's going on right now in my 35-year-old life and thought about all of the different frameworks and different theories and concepts that I learned about in my 20s that can be applied to now, which brings me to what we're getting into today, man. The reality of whiteness and what I think is what is scholar Robert Farr calls the view from nowhere. Damo, feel free, you feel me, to jump on if you got it. This is what I'm doing. You know what I mean? This how we getting down with it, Damo. I got me a nice little PowerPoint. I'm gonna be having Dr. George Yancey on soon. Mark my words, y'all. Right now, we're getting into our bag. I believe that a part of the purpose of this show, that I made this show, I believe, I'm telling you, the reason why we have Research Over Me Search is for you to be able to get a language to say what you mean and mean what you say, as well as being able to articulate your position in the world, as well as how this world positions you. You feel me? The reality of whiteness for me is about the power of invisibility, and how a lot of times when you name whiteness for what it is, that is what gets us into the quote unquote culture war. And that is what gets us into the quote unquote attacking of white men. Critical race theory, feminism, Marxism, all the different schools of thought that have been criminalized by the infrastructure, I would say makes whiteness visible. And when it comes to me, talking about whiteness, I think it's important that I tell y'all what I mean when I use this terminology, because I know it's easy to think about it on a surface level as just thinking about it as mere skin color. When I say whiteness, though, you know what I mean? I'm coming from a theoretical lens of what Dr. George Yancey, shout out to Dr. George Yancey, he says that whiteness is the site of power. And as much as it functions as a site of power, it's invisible. And that is how it maintains itself. It sets itself as the orchestrated facade as business as usual. Right now, I'm thinking about the story that I heard before I got on here on live and started talking to y'all about what happened here in Texas when you have a MAGA father, a white male father, shoot his daughter because his daughter decided to challenge and say she disagreed with Trump. So from their argument, we have an instance of white on white violence where we see the dysfunctionality of this kinship within this, at least this specific household. And we don't have any evocation, of racism, or them being racialized at all. What we see it as is being orchestrated as business as usual. Anytime white people have conflict, that conflict can be seen as business as usual. When us as black people have conflict with each other, it's a pathological reason to justify treating us in a particular manner. Whiteness is the nameless. It goes unmarked. I'm finna get into some specific examples of what I mean by this, but I want to make sure that we're all on the same playing field. We want to make sure we're all on the same page when I go further into this little lecture. That's what I'm calling it. You feel me? Shout out to everybody that subscribed to Research Over Me Search, especially everybody in my Substack community, of why I'm bringing y'all this, right? The only way to confront what Dr. George Yancey or what Dr. Farr calls whiteness is to confront it and essentially intentionally identify at all its instances. When I was building my debate career, shout out to my boy Political Plug, Damo, Perfect Prophet, Rashid. These are two people I debated with at the University of Oklahoma. And when we're debating, this is one of the first philosophies that really put me on game, that allowed for me to say what I mean and mean what I say, and gave me the verbiage to be able to point out shit that I always wanted to point out, but I feel like I didn't have the language. You know what I mean? I didn't have the rhetoric to be like, nah, this is what that is. And when I used to attempt to do it as somebody that was born and raised in Bryan, Texas, in a little small redneck town, even in those AP, pre-AP classes, honors classes, I felt like I would be disarmed. And now when I started to learn about whiteness, I understood why I would be disarmed, because specifically of what I was doing. I was trying to name whiteness. And I'm telling y'all, whiteness is most powerful when it's invisible. Here goes my first example. Have y'all ever heard of WET, White Entertainment Television? If y'all being real, most of y'all would say no. And if you know, you'll be like, nah, that's all television. But you see that the Black entertainment television, it goes cited. So what I'm saying right here is that whiteness gave me the ability to understand how normalization works and how there are different things that become normalized, and then whiteness says it is natural, i.e. the paradigm of white over black, light over dark, or man over women, or straight over gay. This hierarchy of power, that's what it's about. It's about name and power, and about the white elites specifically right now, the Trump administration. What they see as being a threat to their power is being able to identify. That's the reason why they criminalizing lectures. That's the reason why they saying kindergartners can't learn certain words, because they don't want them to have the ability or the tools to be able to call out what's happening to us and what we're experiencing. You know, white entertainment television is everywhere. It's always watched, but it's never seen. It is Friends. It is Everybody Loves Raymond. It is Lord of the Rings. It is all the things that we see as just being American regular old TV, but it's showing you the absence of blackness and the absence of indigeneity is, hey, that's what that is. But if we have the movie Sinners come out and they feel like white people are only being depicted in a negative light, now all of a sudden they understand how TV is racialized, and now all of a sudden we see that we fucking up. That fucks up the business as usual or the status quo. It is the white counterpart to Black entertainment television, an American television channel that is aimed at black folks. We know that when we're watching mainstream television and you're not a white person, that you're supposed to just envision yourself in it, or recognize that what you're seeing is never supposed to, represent you, and you cool with that. Or you're not cool with that, you're just seeing that as business for usual. That is the facade, you know what I'm saying? Whiteness is a social location of power, privilege, and prestige. It is the invisible package that is is the invisible knapsack of unearned privilege. You know what I'm saying? Shout out to Peggy McIntosh. This is what I feel like white people are fighting about, and specifically the white conservatives are thinking about and what they're fighting against. They're fighting against trying to keep that invisible knapsack of unearned privileges and figuring out every single way to justify by saying we got to make America great again, or even how J.D. Vance talked to white guilt. These are all the things that I learned is an epistemological stance. And epistemology, just a fancy ass word for knowledge production and how you know what you know. You feel me? If you believe that boys supposed to wear blue and girls wear pink and Christopher Columbus sold the ocean blue in 1492, that is coming from a particular epistemological stance. If you believe that, BET or Black History Month is bad, and what white people had that is coming from a particular epistemological stance. What the scholars taught me, and with the language that I would use, and say that you have an epistemology of ignorance. A lot of people, how they come to know what they know is through this realm of ignorance. And it's one of the reasons why we have knee-jerk reactions and folks throwing temper tantrums when it comes to being called out. And when I'm saying that whiteness is site of power, think about when you're talking about, and we're intersectional with it. Think about when you come up with the terminology of heteronormativity. Or think about how it is demonized for straight people and cisgender people to be called cisgender. The calling out of power is what makes people, be this, And shout out to you, Jason. I think when I'm in my bag, y'all, this is one of the reasons why you got to tune in to Research of Me Search, because then I get to have teachable moments with fine white men like here, Jason, that's probably never kind of seen somebody speak truth to power in this way, and they having these surface level knee-jerk reactions. Right now, I'm about to illustrate. When I say people think deeply about shallow shit, I'm about to show you and illustrate how people like Jason Borders fit the bill. He says right here, privilege, question mark, LOL, laugh my ass off. Blacks can break crimes and get away with it. We see it every day on local news. Explain that. What I can tell you right now is that with whiteness, you're always able to discursively explain away how you support a president that has broken so many crimes, but you still feel like he's presidential material. See, right now, Jason, you're showing me that you don't have the ability to think or speak for yourself. And that's the reason why you're talking about this script. This script right here about how blacks break crimes. And what we know is that according to your own FBI statistics, we see that black and white people commit crimes at similar rates. Even when y'all want to sensationalize that black people kill each other at alarming rates, we see that there is less than a 10% margin between black folks killing black folks and white folks killing white folks. So we see that right now I'm illustrating how whiteness always already wants to go invisible and figure out how to engage in racial pathology to render its invisibility. You see what I'm saying? Right now, we have over 1 million files of the Epstein. We have 1 million pages of the Epstein files where we see unique white men in the absence of blacks, the absence of blacks that are committing crimes. What we see right here is that this illustrates how the impact of whiteness can also be bad for white people, because it makes it where you are so gung-ho on maintaining the invisibility of whiteness, you're willing to marginalize how whiteness and white privilege has also led to the violence of white girls, white women, particularly. Jeffrey Epstein was able to go with always already not being detected, therefore not being detected. He always meant to be not being suspected, therefore not being detected, therefore not being punished. And that allowed for him to ride under the radar so much that put a lot of white girls, particularly at the realm of, of violence. So when you have people like Jason Borders that wants to recenter the conversation away from whiteness and make it about the criminality of black people, this is the illustration of what it means by always wanting to render itself invisible. Anytime you have somebody try to recenter what's happening in center stage to get away from what the conversation is, especially when it's about identifying the power in something, this is what the whiteness scholars are talking about. This is a link to the everything that I'm talking about. Shout out to you, Jason, for allowing for me to, really get into this teachable moment about what whiteness can be seen as. And what we know is that when it comes to what is deemed as what we should be talking about, the parameters of race, the boundaries of race, a lot of the scholars within whiteness would say that the way that racial dialogue is structured is always around the comfort zone of whiteness and white people. So in this instance, we see that when it comes to conversations about power, if that conversation makes particular white men, particular white folks feel uncomfortable, that discomfort, their personal discomfort is now mapped onto your body. And now you have to be responsible for their discomfort. It's the reason why so many law officers are able to justify violence that happens to black bodies, because they can say, this body made me in fear, i.e. my discomfort is what should be outweigh everything, even if I can bring bodily harm to this individual. So the reason why I'm getting into this is because I believe, what Huey P. Newton said, power is the ability to define the phenomenon and make it act in a desired manner. Today, the phenomenon we're getting into is whiteness. And what a lot of scholars talk about is the identification of power, or the site of power. Whiteness is an identity, a culture. It is often a colonizing way of life that is largely invisible to white folks, though rarely to people of color. And that is one of the privileges of whiteness. One of the privileges of really all types of power is it allows for you to be ignorant to the very harms that your privilege causes. So this first bullet point, you feel me? Whiteness is an identity, a culture, and an often colonizing way of life that is largely invisible to whites, but it's always, always, always present to people of color, because if we're not present of it, it would impact our survivability and the quality of our life. Whiteness is the transcendental norm. It creates the possibilities and conditions for something to be. So when I start thinking about, democracy, stability, all of the terms that the nation state has been able to justify to transcend the imperial power of whiteness is what I think about when I talk about transcendental norm. the possibilities and the conditions for what can be is normalized by who gets to dictate the conversation on stability and what it means to be human and what it means to commit a humanitarian law. If this was 2004, America would have to invade itself because all the reasons they've been able to justify invasion. Whiteness is thus multifaceted and pervasive. It's the reason why I'm using the terminology of whiteness and not just white, because it's important for us to always think about the people of color that become agents of white supremacy. About how people of color can also internalize those different values, those different morals, those different ideologies about white supremacy, you feel me, and white superiority, the myth of it, and start to try to always get some advantages for themselves, rewards for themselves at the expense of everybody else. I would argue that whiteness is what incentivizes neoliberalism to talk about the individual at the expense of the collective in the community. And this is the reason why when I was 19, 20, the reason why I took so keen to thinking about whiteness, because I feel like it gave me the lexicon to really describe what I was experiencing and describe how the world was structured in terms of power and domination. And that's the reason why so much of my work focuses on the intersections of power, domination, identity, education. There are white months. White History Month is really, I would argue, January through December. February is, I would argue, a lot of the ways that it becomes commodified and put into our minds, it always justifies what forms of Black resistance is deemed most legitimate when it comes to us fighting against white supremacy. And it always deems which Black person was palatable enough to make white folks feel comfortable to be allowed in their spaces. When I started learning more about the Black radical tradition, or what some folks would call Black excellence, I started to think more about how we celebrate the first Black person to get in, blah, 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 blah. But it's not saying that this is the first Black person that had the ability or the capacity to get into this white space of place. I think about how this is the first Black person that white folks allowed to actualize themselves in this space of place based off of their acceptability of them. So a lot of times when I think about how Black history is deployed, especially through February, it's usually through what are the Black figures and Black forms of resistance that are most palatable and most consumable and most desirable by the state. And I think about how the ideology of whiteness obscured Malcolm X and obscured how I learned about the Black Panther Party, because those entities, those individuals was naming whiteness for what it was. And as a result, the apparatus of whiteness had to go on neutralize their ass and get them out the way. So when we think about the stopping the rising of the Black Messiah, what J. Edgar Hoover said in the FBI, the Black Messiah is only the person that's calling the invisibility of whiteness for what it is, or calling the site of power for what it is. Because that power is what structures social order, and social order is all about a hierarchy. The power of whiteness is what maintains this hierarchy in many different ways, whether we want to acknowledge it or not. Let's keep it going though. A lot of, let me go full screen for this right here. When I used to do these trainings for different, faculty and staff at the University of Oklahoma, or when I would get booked to go do these faculty workshops for different universities or for different organizations, before I started talking about white privilege, I was always sure to give a framework of what this means. A lot of y'all in the comment section right now, particularly, our white neighbors, you are illustrating racial illiteracy, and you think white privilege means that white folks haven't struggled. Here on Research Over Me Search, my goal is to give you an intersectional understanding of power and domination, for you to think about, hey, yes, white people can suffer from classism and ableism and sexism. You see what I'm saying? And I'm not saying white folks don't struggle. The concept of white privilege is saying you don't struggle because you are white. Now, when it comes to me getting into this next little mini lecturette, I had to contextualize what I mean when I'm talking about declaring whiteness as a site of privilege and declarations of privilege. Now, this part right here is more to like white liberals that think that being able to declare or admit their own racism or admit their privilege is a way that makes them immune from it. So I'm hoping that for the white folks watching this, you take from this what it means to be an anti-racist, what it means for you to be always already against racism, while acknowledging that the system of racism always privileges you and that you have different ways you're ignorant, you feel me, to how this power and dominations allows for you to never think about this impact. I would say, to men, it's like thinking about what it means to be an anti-sexist. You should be intentionally, consciously always against sexism, but you should never be ignorant to the ways that you are privileged and preferenced by the system of domination of sexism, as well as how you're ignorant to the ways you're seduced by sexism because, hey, you know what I mean? So declaring whiteness or even admitting to one's own racism, when the declaration is assumed to be evidence of an anti-racist commitment, it does not always do what it says. I think right now we're seeing that a bunch of the performance of Black squares and Black Lives Matter is starting to dwindle because whiteness deemed it cool for a little mini second. It was deemed as being a okay contingency of whiteness because it was able to prove that whiteness does have humanity. It was able to prove that whiteness does have the ability to make up for its past transgressions. When I was in college policy debate, I dealt with much more moderate, centrist liberals, and sometimes even the hippie, Marxist-Leninists, Heidegger, Nietzsche reading, Baudrillard reading, you feel me, like different white liberals, and they would think that their literacy of race or their understandings of whatever the fuck they was reading would get them out of their racial literacy. So they would think that declaring a whiteness as a part of the project would get them out of my link arguments. Declaring one's own whiteness, even in a part of a project of social critique, can produce white privilege in ways that are unforeseen. And it makes it where the conversation, start to, move away from the power that's been identified. So for, the white liberals, white conservatives watching this, and for the non-white folks watching this, especially the Black people, is for me, when I learned about the philosophy and theory of whiteness, I thought about how my life had been impacted by it, but also thought about how I could move and how I should move with this information. Sometimes it's not just knowledge being power, it's the application of the knowledge that you really need. So we know that there's ways to weaponize one's own privilege. And I think this is when white people, the white conservatives, uniquely started getting pissed off at white liberals because they feel like they were weaponizing their white privilege against them. Or they feel like they're engaging in race trading because we had a deal, white man, we had a deal. It's supposed to be for us. And now you're dishonoring your whiteness because you're trying to help the Blacks or the Latinas. And we can't have that. So when it comes to interpreting power in relation to you specifically, I think that a lot of y'all should look yourselves in the mirror and think about all of the things that you are against. Think about how you implicated in it and how you get in the way of stopping it. Use myself for an example. I consider myself to be an advocate of, feminism, an advocate of women's progression, an advocate of women equality. For me to be a true ally and accomplice, I think that I should always be conscious of how I get in the way of women's liberation, how I get in the way of progression of women, and how I'm implicated in the violence of it. You see what I'm saying? It doesn't mean that I go cry and be like, well, no matter how much I read and how much I advocate, I will always be seen as a sexist. So I should do nothing about it. It's thinking ethically about, hey, today I went to sleep and I know this much about sexism. Tomorrow when I wake up, can I know a little bit more about how I'm implicated in it? You know what I mean? So that's what I mean about interpreting power in relationship to you. Now, the second thing is being able to demand both the removal and recentering of power. And I think this is what is going on right now in my criticism towards liberals, specifically right now. The murder of Renee Good and Alex Presti has allowed for a lot of y'all to recensor what a lot of y'all is going through, or a lot of us is going through. Instead of us talking about how there are certain bodies that are magnetizing this violence, that violence now that's happening to Haitians and Puerto Rico is America. But actually think about that's the sad part is that during the Super Bowl, a lot of the conservatives showed us that they would probably call ICE on Puerto Ricans because they don't even know what's going on, right? And Antonio, I feel like you were bot right now. You messing up my train of thought. So I'm gonna tell you this one time, and I'm not gonna repeat it anymore. This is your first warning. You are a part of the virtual classroom experience of research over me search. And right now I'm in Professor Consciously mode. So I don't have time to go back and forth with you. I have a couple hundred people watching this live, and I don't think that we should hijack their learning experience because you want to be an asshole and you want to be an attention person. You know, there are millions of content creators, especially you on Facebook. There are millions of folks on Facebook that may align more with the shenanigans that you want to push. You're already starting to get in the way of the lecture too much, or to get in the way of this, what I'm talking about right now, too much. So this is your warning, your only warning. The next time I will be bouncing your ass up out of here. Do you understand? Great. Now, in the context of debate, and in the context even of what's going on now in America, in debate, it will always be the arguments that are given the most legitimacy and credence are only the ones 23 people are watching on Facebook. I'm streaming right now from multiple different platforms, but what you thought I was doing was playing with you, Antonio. So now you know you're false. You're wrong. You're on Facebook, and there I'm streaming right now from like 5 different platforms. But thank you, man. You've now been kicked out of the classroom. Appreciate you. In debate, the operation, the how whiteness got mobilized was how we thought about credibility and legitimacy, and how the scholars that produced arguments around race and power, they were seen as being more credible than the scholars that were calling into question or that were challenging that power that were people of color. And I think how this operates now is that we can have evidence on the contrary that disproves what the white oligarchs, white conservative, people say. And that does not matter because they believe they have authority and the most credibility on a subject. That's the reason why we can see somebody get shot in the face and they can come on and tell us, hey, what you saw with your eyes, that ain't credible. I'm going to tell you what you saw. I'm going to tell you what you saw. And it's not ironic that typically what they say you should have seen is something that renders whiteness as invisible, that doesn't allow for you to call out the sites of power and domination. Calling out power and domination bad. Every literature base, every book they've banned, every identity they've trying to trivialize, every single one of those is calling out and naming power and domination. And what we know is that if you wake up, if you get too woke, that's the reason why they started to demonize and bastardize the concept of wokeness, is because it was doing too much calling into question whiteness. You was taking away the invisibility of how we all get fucked over there, where you start to internalize, maybe this is happening because I'm just bad, not because of these structural things, not because of these different ways of access, opportunity, and resources being denied me because of my racial identity, not because I can be racially profiled, what the Supreme Court said, because of my skin color or my accent. It's because of me. So when we start to get into this language and get into the literature, get into the Marxism, get into the Afro-pessimism, get into the feminism, this is exactly what this is about. This is about being scared to call into question power, and being scared about how people in power feel like when you call out their power, how it jeopardizes it and how it threatens it. So right now, I ain't even going, these last 2 slides, I'm not going to get into it because I feel like it might be a little bit too philosophical for what we're getting into. And that's just what it is. Shout out to you, Sarah Kennedy. Sarah Kennedy says, Antonio Davis is right about you. You are terrified to debate him. What I think that a lot of y'all should recognize is that if I had $1 for every clout chasing pseudo intellectual that thought they would be able to circumvent hard work and be able to get an intellectual ass whooping their way into some followers, I would be a millionaire, or at least I have about 10,000. I'm 35 years old. And the reason why you're here is because it is a reflection of my intellect, and it is a reflection of everything I've been able to build. I'm in no position, and my time is too valuable to have to prove my intellect to some random ass person that's really just clout chasing, being an attention whore. Like they're like, I think maybe if I was 25 or in my 20s, I would go for the reverse psychology and let somebody who I don't know from a can of paint and let y'all two jump me into some shit that's like, hey man, my followers came here to do a particular thing, and that particular thing is not to, I don't even know Antonio Davis. I don't even know you, Sarah. What I do know is I'm flattered that I am flattered that my debate pros make y'all feel so much bad that you got to prove yourself to me because you think that, you know what I mean? I could start bragging and just bringing down different awards on you, but I ain't gonna do you like that. Nah, I'll bring one. I'll bring one. I'll be one. This right here is a All-American plaque from 2014 because whatever college football team you like, I probably was intellectually spanking their ass, giving them a whole bunch of nightmares in that debate room. And, you know, a lot of them trauma bonding with each other because they doing what you're doing right now in my comment section, throwing a temper tantrum because you can't come to grips with what I'm laying down and how I'm speaking truth to power. And that's fine. That is cool. You know, I'm an acquired taste. I'm not for everybody. And I'm fine if you think what I'm putting down is so nasty, you want to spit it out. As a former debater, as somebody, my first real job with my degrees was being a debate coach. I'm a former director of a major powerhouse debate program in the United States. As a debater, as a debate coach, as a director of debate, my debate program was ranked in the top 10 of the country consecutively. I don't think the Hall of Fame basketball players or Hall of Fame football players would just jump at any random ass person on the street talking about, let's play a YMCA. And you just happen to be looking at and talking to a Hall of Fame policy debater that's like, I don't need no, you know what I mean? Education is elevation, and just education is elevation. And instead of being stuck on stupid, I'm trying to sprinkle some lessons in, hoping that it can elevate you. To all my neighbors, to all my kin folks, shout out to y'all. I appreciate y'all. That's that. That's that. And it's the best thing about when I'm in this mode. When I'm in my professor mode, being able to compartmentalize the ego and the emotions along with the lesson is very easy for me. And for the people watching this right now, tying this back to the lesson of whiteness, the individuals that always come spam in the comment section, may it be a bot or a real person, because studies did come out and show that for the first time in internet history, bots outweigh real human users, which is important for us to acknowledge. Regardless, though, of what they doing and saying in the comment section, it is always about how something that has said has made them uncomfortable, and they believe with their authority and how they've been indoctrinated that their comfort should always be centered. Now they want to still center stage and recenter the focus on something else that's much more comfortable for them. Even so much, they will straw man argument you and feel like they can respond to arguments you never made, hoping they will recenter what we're talking about. These are all the tactics of whiteness. And when I say whiteness, I'm not talking about a skin color. I'm getting into the philosophy or theory of whiteness scholars called the site of power and domination. And what I know from being somebody that researches, that travels the country, that done lessons and lectures and all these things about power and domination, that's what this word is about right now. Right now, the superpower of America is crumbling before our eyes. And now China, Brazil, Russia, India, all the countries in BRICS are now figuring out how they can respond to how power and domination in the hegemon known as America is starting to denigrate. And what this means now for how they can assert power and domination. What debate also taught me is that in the international world, in the international realm, it's this concept of American hegemony. American hegemony. And at first I used to be like, man, what the hell hegemony mean? And being real with you, I'm so country, I might even be saying it wrong. But before I read the actual definition of American hegemony, how I learned it, it was like, oh, so this is how it's like America globally be like what they taught me on a local level was bad, that gangster shit. So American hegemony is when on a global scale, on the global stage, America say, listen, man, I like you and I want you. We can do this the hard way, or we can do this the easy way. I'm going to roll over your ass, or you can roll with me. Or I can fabricate a narrative that makes the entire global community come in and believe in your subjectivity and believe in your victimization being justified. American hegemony is how we don't think about war being declared when America bombs Nigeria or when America invades Venezuela and picks up its leader. But we think about it being an act of war if the Chinese say, shit, if y'all do something else, we're going to do something back. Oh, they're going to wage war on us, this, that, and the other. When the whiteness scholars are talking about whiteness setting it up as a facade, as business as usual, when we see America going and doing things that we would justify or that we would be able to condemn outright for being wrong, we're able to see it like, no, it's you know, Maduro was bad. He was killing his own people. He was locking up his own people. We got to go help him. Oh, Nigeria, they dealing with Islamic terrorists. So we got to go bomb them. This is American hegemony. When America believes it's the watchdog and the policeman of the entire world, and whatever they want to do is justified insofar they can say they're doing the right thing. When I was watching a speech from Ibrahim Traore, he is the current, you know what I'm saying, leader of Burkina Faso. He was talking about how the French always try to put African countries in these very subservient, you feel me, things. Shout out to you, TMF. Appreciate you, man. They have zero humanity, don't save them. Shout out to you for that $2, man. Thank you. Appreciate you. Where Ibrahim Traore was getting at is that a lot of African countries been kept at their knees with concepts of humanitarianism and democracy and stability, and how those concepts for African countries has always justified the abstraction of what they're doing. We don't call it colonialism. We don't call it exploitation. We don't call it imperialism. We don't call it that. We call it democracy. We call it foreign aid. To me, this is how whiteness operates on a global scale. We don't call it for what it is. We figure out ways to characterize it in a much more ethical way. There's a lot of, like, another example. The world romanticizes Queen Elizabeth of Britain in such a nasty way that it make my skin crawl. Queen Elizabeth was a demon. I'm talking about a real life demon that to this day, a bunch of regions throughout the world is trying to recover from the way that she was able to justify benevolent imperialism by saying the only way we can help you monkeys and you dirty Indians and you is by me civilizing y'all. Y'all are too stuck in your primitive state of development of humans, and the only way we can do it is let me, Queen Elizabeth, come through with my British army and military, take your resources and give you a little. Man, listen, I swear, listen. If we're going to be petty and look up the definition of demon, I think that a bunch of the European colonizers would fit the bill. And what I'm doing right now is calling the site of power and domination out for what it is. And this is what this is what happens. But making sure I don't get off too far from what I was telling you I was doing. American hegemony, this is according to ResearchGate and Cadmus Journal. American hegemony means the United States' dominant position in global politics, economics, and culture, especially after World War II, achieved through the unmatched military strength, economic power, and the ability to set international rules. This is shaping the liberal world. When I say liberal, I'm not talking about it in terms of bipartisan politics. I'm talking about liberalism as a political ideology where you believe in individual rights and privatization and shit like that. You feel me? You shape where liberalism shapes the world order and mean notions are found legitimate through the extent, nature of half hegemony. Sometimes called half hegemony, they're debated. But this always, my point is, it involves providing global public goods like security and stable markets but also influences other cultures, leading to both praise and promoting democracy that is able to evade criticism of cultural imperialism, as well as being able to justify global order by saying the only way the world would not experience economic downturn, the only way the world will experience no nuclear war, unless America stays the top dog. If America or the American economy begins to fall, the whole world should be worried, because this means social order will fall. In reality, this just means that the white imperial power will no longer be able to justify having its boot on the world's neck, and that now it would be held in contempt. Held in contempt for all the fucked up shit that it does. Now, America can justify going into a country and stealing its weapons and stealing its resources in the name of stopping a humanitarian crisis, or saying this right here was against international law. This was a humanitarian, this is a war on humanity. Americans, man. This is the facade of whiteness. In this instance, this is the very acts you can justify bringing in military invasions for other country. Does not justify happen to America. I.e., if Saddam Hussein or Fidel Castro, or you name the color of person that is a person of color that's a dictator, if they're doing their constituents, their citizens wrong, this justifies America coming in and being the white saviors and being able to do what they want to do. To me, this is how whiteness, the theory of whiteness, how it gave me the verbiage to be able to talk about and think about how the world operates. Get a little bit more into some philosophy, man. Shout out to Qasim Rashid. You know what I mean? I feel like me thinking about presidential war powers made me think about The View from Nowhere, because now I got to get into The View from Nowhere. You know, I'm finna read you some debate evidence. I might even put it on the screen for you. You know what I'm saying? I might even put it on. Put it on. I might even put it on the floor for you. You know, I think I am actually. Shout out to y'all, man. I encourage y'all, if you want access to any of the things I'm referencing, I definitely will put it in my newsletter on Substack. Right now, I'm finna show y'all a piece of evidence that I used to use. Shout out to you, TMF. I appreciate you for that $5, man. They refuse to evolve. They've been toxic to everything and everyone on earth. Enough is enough. We got to move differently. Sorry, not sorry. But this is the part right here that shows us how whiteness impacts our psychology, and how we start to understand that when we call out what they're doing, it brings a certain threat to our bodies. We can characterize Islamic terrorists and people that's under Islam as being, you know, potentially jihadists, you know what I'm saying? And they see nothing wrong with that. They can talk about, hey, black people commit all these crimes, so now it justifies me being able to say a generalized fucked up statement about black folks. But when you start talking about the violent history of white supremacy, all of a sudden we have to be scared and walk on tiptoe on eggshells, because we don't want to make white folks feel uncomfortable, because we understand the history and legacy of making white folks feel uncomfortable. We know. We've seen all the movies. We know the history of Black Wall Street and Rosewood. We seen it. We seen how we had taxpayers' dollars fund COINTELPRO, eliminate niggas because they was doing that. Shout out to you tonight. I appreciate you for that super sticker, man. They appreciate you for that super sticker. This I get to the one that get to it, man. This is Arnold Farr. I said Robert. This is Arnold Farr. This is The View from Nowhere and getting into the whiteness philosophy. And I'm gonna read the card and I'm gonna show you, and I'm gonna show y'all so it can make sense. I'd be wanting to tip, but I'd be giving Google 30% of your cut. Hey, CPND, shoot it to me on, you know what I'm saying, on Cash App or something, man. Or yeah, shoot me on Cash App, or you feel me? Consciously educated, definitely. I'm gonna start now. I see why folks that's always on YouTube put their Cash App and Venmos, because they like, I want to get the full cut. Shout out to you, CPND. You didn't educate me on something today, and I've been able to tie those two dots together, man. Appreciate you tremendously. I'm finna put it in the chat, you know what I'm saying? Because I am not funded by Democrats. I'm not funded by any corporations. I'm an independent. You feel me? So I appreciate all the various ways that y'all donate or that y'all, jump on. You know what I'm saying? I'm not begging for nothing now, but I definitely appreciate You know, when y'all want to support financially, goddamn, I definitely appreciate you, man. But Arnold Farr, he was a professor, maybe he still is a professor at St. John's University. This comes from his journal, Whiteness Visible: The Enlightenment of Racism and Structure of Racialized Consciousness. You know, I think me reading so much about shit like this when I was in college, kind of led me to some things, you know. Now this the full screen. This the school do PayPal, and I seen some your way. Oh yeah, PayPal is, I think it's the Consciously. I'll find out. Arturo, come back, man. Come back to me. You feel me? I'm gonna do more live streams. I like doing these. I'm start doing these more, man. So definitely, I'll make sure I get all that there. TMF, I appreciate your support. You know, I appreciate your continued support. Your comment, your follow, you know, you know what I'm saying, donations, it is all greatly appreciated. The reason why I'm able to be nominated for NAACP Image Awards, the reason why I'm able to get booked in spaces in different places a lot of times is because of how y'all give me that support and engagement. I know sometimes I spend a little bit too much time on the haters and naysayers in the comment section, so I want to just really show all the people that really come in good faith to learn, whether you disagree with me or agree with me, that come in and support. Like, I really appreciate y'all, and I'm really working in therapy and working with my mind to be much more intentional about focusing on positivity and focusing on people that's here to learn and not focusing on people that's here to, you know what I'm saying, be a distraction. So again, thank y'all, appreciate y'all. This content creator knows that a lot of the ways I'm able to enjoy the life I have right now is because of how y'all rock with me, man. Also, friendly reminder to people that don't know. A lot of the things I'm talking about right now, the reason why I can speak to it so confidently and so robustly is because I was already doing this work before I had a following, before y'all knew me as Consciously, before I had, you know what I'm saying, any of this. I was already doing the work in the classroom and already doing the work in the community. And it's the reason why I've been able to have so much experience and knowledge that I can share with y'all right now because of all my experiences. But Arnold Farr, you know, this philosopher, he says that the whiteness of philosophy is visible in two ways. First, the discipline itself has been dominated by white males. And the reason I used to highlight this is because in debate, the idea is that the more arguments I can get out in my 9 minutes, the better I am with the time and the more likely I am to win. So the highlighting of this, I reckon I got it on the screen. The highlighting of this is to make sure you get to the point and not have to read all of the ununderlined part. But I will give y'all access to what I'm reading right now. You know what I mean? Definitely go subscribe to the Substack channel. I do newsletters all the time where I give you a nice little works cited bibliography, especially when I'm quoting work like this. But Arnold Farr, again, the whiteness of philosophy is visible in two ways. First, the discipline itself has been dominated by white males. The second is in terms of philosophy's attempt to ignore the fact that we are racialized beings. The ability to ignore race and the impact that it has had on the formation of social consciousness in the West is a sign of white privilege. The ability to ignore race and the impact that it has had on the formation of social consciousness in the West is a sign of white privilege. It's not only a sign of white privilege, it is what I believe and what I will argue the whiteness scholars are saying is the view from nowhere. The view from nowhere in philosophy is a view of privilege. And this right here where I'm going to read some of the underlying parts so we can get some of the context. Even the kinds of questions raised by philosophers are indicative of the degree of social comfort that the philosopher enjoys. In this discussion, Ralph Ellison's Invisible Man in his Blackness Visible, and Charles Mills writes, what are the problems that this individual faces? Is the problem global doubt? Not at all. Such a doubt would never be possible because the whole point of subordinate Black experience or general experience of oppressed groups is that the subordinated is in no position to doubt the existence of the world and other people, especially that of their oppressors. It could be said that only those most solidly attached to the world have the luxury of doubt its reality. Only the most solidly attached to the world has the luxury of doubting its reality. For those of you that watch my conversation about democracy, the one I had with the older white gentleman, or the one I had on my podcast, the Chop Up Show, now what I understand and what I will argue is that a bunch of their understandings of democracy is one that is idealism, one that is structured by idealism that denies the realist reality or the material reality that we live in, that is perpetuated by this view from nowhere, where the people that's most solidly attached to the benefits of democracy have the ability of saying democracy should not be doubted. Whereas those whose attachment is more precarious, whose existence is dependent on the goodwill and ill temper of others, are those compelled to recognize that it exists. The first function of power, the second is subjugation. Just making sure we get the context. If your daily existence is largely defined by oppression, by forced intercourse with the world, it is not going to occur that the doubt about your oppressor's existence could in any way be in serious or pressing philosophical problem. This ideal was simply seen frivolous in the perk of social privilege. Before I get into Charles Mill's point at one's position in life, I think this is important right here for me to quote what I learned about Stokely Carmichael and what I learned from Stokely Carmichael. Stokely Carmichael said that, or how I think about it like this. Everybody got feelings. Stokely Carmichael says, if the white man wants to lynch me, that is his problem. If the white man has the power to lynch me, that is my problem. A lot of the ways we've been taught to think about race and racism has not only been dominated by this concept of whiteness, it is also one that has always justified the oppression and saying that this is the way it has to be. I kind of lost my train of thought right there on Camp It Out. That's why that pause was a little bit more dramatic. It's like, hold on, what was I saying? Back to the subject. Actually, back to the topic. Actually forgot it. Well, this right here where I was at though. Mills and me talking about the view from nowhere. Mills points, one's position in life determines what kind of questions are important. The kinds of questions that philosophers generally raise reflect a certain degree of social comfort in the absence of immediate threat of dehumanization. The epistemic communities, again, that's just a conjugate of me talking about epistemology. So this right here is talking about the knowledge communities, the communities that we are able to foster through what we know and how we know it. The epistemic communities provides us with a certain trajectory of inquiry that is legitimated by our communities. I'm gonna go translate what I think this means. You know what I'm saying to me, and then y'all in the comment section, I engage with y'all and see what y'all think this means. But the inquiring gaze of the philosopher must turn upon the philosopher and examine the ways in which our questions are driven by our social locations. This social location affects the process whereby we include certain questions about our philosophical inquiry, while excluding others. By and large, white philosophers have failed to subject themselves in inquiring gaze they have turned on to others. To me, what this means is that our social location always already mattered. Our race, our class, our ability, our experiences, the way that we are located within the world is always a part of how we come to know what is in the world, and always a part of how we should judge or value the way somebody comes to know something. What is your social location? Social location always already matters. We know this because the social location that is always identified is usually ones that are in opposition to whiteness. And the reason why the social location of white people particularly is something they want to always keep hush hush. It's the reason why they always taught us the main things that the main things that solidify power in this country is the shit that white folks taught us they were told not to talk about publicly. Money, religion, politics. Money, religion, and politics. Say it one more time. Money, religion, and politics. In the Western world, especially when it comes to the colonizing of the Western world, how was that colonization justified? Money, religion, politics. When I'm talking about the top of this live stream about whiteness always wanting to like stay invisible, I'm getting at the ways that power wants to stay invisible. Even think about it like this: the red pill, blue pill, red fish, blue fish, knick knack paddywhack, give a dog a bone. The way the Andrew Tate, Kevin Samuel Light manosphere operates is that they're trying to make sure the site of power and domination of patriarchy, of misogyny, of sexism, the site of power of male domination always is rendered invisible and natural and normal. And when you condemn it, you pandering. When you condemn it, you simping. When you condemn it, you are fucking up the way in which they experience their comfort. So when you think about the he-man, woman haters, think about the way in which the discomfort they experience is what justifies the way they to them. I ain't saying it's justified legitimately. I'm thinking the way they think it's justified is because how dare you, bitch, make me feel uncomfortable? How dare you, you woman, you slut, you think about all the language they use. This is trying to discourage you from calling out the power and domination of women, as well as trying to make sure the people that benefit from it continue to benefit from it. That's what's bad. What's bad is you are calling out the site of power and domination, and that shit is bad. It's the reason why a lot of us people of color, we learn how to deal with discomfort because we see it as always already being true. 2 + 2 is 4 and the sky is blue, and we got to always deal with discomfort. It's a part of our, especially black folks, it's a part of our black lives. It's being discomforted, being uncomfortable. Shout out to you, man. Just there for that 10. Appreciate you. Comfort is a lie. Most white people just now seeing the truth too damn long. And this is the reason, too, is why I started this petition. I'm about to make sure I drop it right now in the comment section. The reason why I started this petition to demand inclusive year-round Black history is because a lot of y'all think that we live in unprecedented times. A lot of y'all are feeling like and questioning, is this the America you've been living in? And you asking those questions because you are ignorant of Black history. And it's the reason why you should sign that petition. The petition I just put into the comment section, we need to get this petition to 100,000 signatures. But the reason why a lot of y'all feel like the America that you are now being unveiled to you is an America you don't know. It's because you don't know the history of colonialism or settler colonialism or anti-Blackness or, you feel me, this Black history. If you knew Black history, if you know the history of indigenous folks in this country, you would see that a lot of the shit that's being deployed right now is things that were mastered throughout history on Black and indigenous folks. Whiteness or the status quo, the facade is business as usual, said that this type of violence, it is normal. It's rational. And now what happens is that violence that used to unilaterally go outward in a much more magnetized, crazier way is now being folded inward. And now a bunch of the violence that was always seen justified on indigenous bodies and Black bodies uniquely in America, now there are people that starting to identify with that. We know that when we were saying, I am Trayvon Martin, I am Sandra Bland, I am, you know what I'm saying? We know that we says page not authorized. Hold on. Share the link. We say that again. Shout out to you for telling me, Brianna. Let me put it again, man. Try this different link. TMF. I think what I've been grappling with right now is that we have experienced so much ecological destruction and so much like degrading of our earth that a lot of scientists argue that we are at the brink of no return. In a lot of the ways that we prioritize convenience and prioritize, you feel me, fastness, or prioritize, I feel like things that are very like minuscule, obscure, it's having real impacts on the world. And the very people that try to justify demonizing and hunting, you know what I'm saying, people of color in the name of protecting the future for children, also turn a blind eye to when we have multinational corporations that's able to pollute the earth and it's able to not only pollute the earth, but make it where communities of color, particularly Black communities, are more likely to deal with the smog and the pollution and the CO2 emissions and all that. When I learned about brownfields in California, I started thinking about how here in Texas, a lot of the oil industry, a lot of the weapons that's manufactured, a lot of those factories, a lot of those plants are put around communities of color. So when I think about how the state of Texas is seen as one of the biggest, economies, not only in the country, but if it was its own country, it would be in the world. A lot of that is made on the backs and the pollution of people of color. Even think about Texas is the #1 weapons manufacturer in the country. A lot of times when we send aid to Israel, we do it in the name of weapons. There are a lot of Black and Latino communities here in Texas that have to deal with crazy levels of pollution in the name of us sending weapons to blow Muhammad up in Gaza and in West Bank. When it comes to the acquisition of TikTok, that was about making sure whiteness is rendered invisible. When Netanyahu was saying that we no longer fight battles in cavalry, we now do it on the internet, and that's the reason why the biggest purchase they've made is on TikTok. It's like, hey, TMF, man, environmental health is something I believe down south, a bunch of the people in power did a ugly, masterful job of hoodwinking and bamboozling us and thinking about the environment is some white hippie tree hugging bullshit that we should not worry about. Meanwhile, they fracking away. Meanwhile, they drilling away. Meanwhile, it's a whole bunch of things that's happening is making it where we are the first people that deal with the impacts of global warming and climate change. At the same time, we're the main ones. Our bodies is bringing to the ground for the extraction of that labor from the ground that's also having a bad impact on the environment. And it's just like, shit, hey, man. Every time you ask Grok one of them little questions, shit, a little bit more CO2 emissions, a little bit more hazardous, toxins is put in the earth for them Black folks in Memphis. And then I think about all the shows, all the episodes specifically that captivated me when I was watching Black Mirror. When I watch them shit, I think like, damn, this supposed to be like futuristic. What would have to happen in the world to make it where, from an ecological standpoint, the world is so uninhabitable, we have to figure out artificial ways to survive? It's what happens. We have people that are greedy, that think that their greed and their extraction of wealth outweighs everything in the world. You start to have these nuclear warheads, and America and Europeans are not used to other countries having these capacity to compete with them. And that's the reason why we demonize all the brown countries having nuclear capabilities, because we cannot trust the irrational people of color, because, oh my God, if they have nuclear weapons, imagine what they'll do with it when in the history, the only people that didn't drop some goddamn nuclear weapons is America and a whole bunch of European people, testing them on different indigenous populations and or dropping them as warfare. This is how whiteness operates. It says that we should always be in fear of people of color because, hey, racism says that, hey, the Muslims can be terrorists. Those Latinos and Africans, they can be terrorists or drug dealers as well. Even though we're the ones that's really conducting the terrorism and selling the drugs. It's whiteness. This is whiteness. And this is what I think this the culture war. The culture war is, even think about it in terms of sexuality. The culture war is, I need to justify heteronormativity and say anything that deviates out of heteronormativity or that tries to call out the power and domination of heteronormativity is in fact what the problem is. Not the actual power of heteronormativity or the actual power of how we marginalize, different queer identities and bodies. That's not the issue. The issue is you calling it out. And this is where people start to disagree with my advocacy. As a matter of fact, if I could see the people on Substack right now, Substack, they're probably good over there. I'm saying? Shout out to people on Substack, but I know in the past, talking about Facebook or YouTube, maybe you've been along with me on my analysis about race, but niggas start talking about their sexuality too much. It starts to destabilize the power that you have and the power that a bunch of my fellow straight people we have when it comes to homo negativity. It makes us want to feel like even if we're poor, even if we black, even if you woman, at least I can be over somebody. The gays over there. So when we start to call out the side of power and domination for how this particular community is always put at the bottom, people start to freak out. Now all of a sudden, you talking about how gay people and trans people and intersex people, how they are violent, how they violated. This makes me feel like you're trying to violate the kids. So because you call it now, how I might be implicated, you feel me, in the violence, I'm gonna make up. I'm gonna make up some shit. What about the kids? What about the children? Eurocentrism and Western epistemologies. Remember, for the people that's been here, epistemology, fancy ass word for knowledge production and how you know what you know. Western epistemology gets us to think about when white folks do shit, it's easy for us to explain it away. And it's the reason why so many of us have a fascination with true crime, because that material reality, it is fighting and contradicting the ideas or the idealism that we've been taught about the world and people that colonize that world. TMF, shout out to you. Appreciate you, man. You say they value punching down. You know? Hey, Jake, the call coming from inside the house, man. Like I know that maybe you have an issue when black men are able to speak with the tenacity I'm speaking with, but as somebody with a degree in human relations, in the most respectful way, you and your facial features represent and reflect more of a monkey than mine does. So I think that if you're gonna make the insults, I think that they should at least land and they should be good. You having your warning now, Mr. Jake. I'm sure you're from a Cowardice Anonymous page, but what I would say is this. I have a couple hundred people here that are actually here to learn, that are actually here to enjoy a refreshing conversation. This is your warning. The next time you act like an immature child in my comment section, you're going to be kicked away from the live stream. Education is elevation. Research over me search. And listen, you do not have to be here. Nobody's forcing you to be here. I actually believe consent is important, and I want you to be a willing participant to be a part of the experience. You're not being coerced. You're not being forced. You have will. Freedom's America. I encourage you to express that freedom and unhand me. You go do your monkey business with the circus you came from. But again, y'all, these are all ways that I think the invisibility of power and domination is a part of how the world operates. It's a reason why the Epstein files was such a big deal for them to be dropped, because there was a lot of invisibility that was structured and sustained through the non-releasing of those files. Now that we have the releasing of those files, we can identify how a bunch of oligarchs, a bunch of rich white men throughout the world, they really believed that as long as they was able to conceal what they was doing in the secrets, they was going to be able to perpetuate their power and domination. I seen today, before I hopped on his live stream with y'all, that Jeffrey Epstein reportedly had bought like, let me see, look it up. You know what I'm saying? I remember who posted it. Let me see, man. Epstein files revealed that Jeffrey Epstein purchased 330 gallons of sulfuric acid in 2018. Watching the Epstein documentary, Epstein was convicted of pedophilia. That, you know what I'm saying, fucking with kids. Not only did he get a lenient sentence, the man got incarcerated at a goddamn country club. He eating what he want to eat. He going where he want to go. And he been convicted of doing violent things to kids. After that conviction, he still was able to move and groove. He still was able to engage in power, especially when it comes to politics, especially when it comes to religion, especially when it comes to finding, you know what I'm saying, money. It's just like, you see. Hey, Dark Fire, Definitely, man. I'm figuring out, thinking about how I'm gonna put together me a nice little mini lecture about debate and about what I learned about debate, but specifically about how to make a claim and warrant, about how to do an impact calculus, and about how to do framing. I think that a lot of bad conversations on the internet happens because people don't know how to frame conversations, and because people think debate is saying aha gotcha moments and not being able to really develop, you know what I'm saying, an argument, not being able and really like being able to really go in depth about something and being able to have a back and forth, you know. Uh Going back to what I was saying over here though, man, because I ain't even got to the, you feel me? I ain't even got to it. And especially speaking of debate, right now, I'm showing y'all debate evidence that I used in 2000 and from 2011 to 2014. I made these arguments. And then, of course, in debate, it's about having the updated evidence and updated shit. So after a while, talking about authors that made them shit in 2004 wasn't as credible as it could be. And what I like about academia and what I like about the academy, this real large, is that they're always pushing conversations and dialogues around things like power and domination. So I'm sure if I was to get in there right now in 2026, there will be new authors and new concepts about the view from nowhere and about whiteness. You know what I'm saying? So I hope that through me getting into this philosophy and showing y'all the actual cards and showing y'all the actual evidence, that it encourages y'all to get up in your bag, to get in your bag, goddamn, getting your research with me search bag. The part of the top part of this page I'm about to read, the part that's not underlined, that's what we call a tagline. So that tagline of debate will be considered an argument. The argument would be universal politics is a function of whiteness, and that the AF or the NEG has universalized the European values without a critique of racial dehumanization. This is an argument that I used to deploy against a lot of the whites philosopher theory guys. You know, I'm going against some Marxism. I'm going against, you know, and it's early too. This is before I got put on Afro-pessimism. Once I put on Afro-pessimism, it was over for all them guys. It was over with for them. But when I got early in debate though, I would use the view from nowhere as a way to debate against all of the post-structural modernity motherfuckers when it comes to these European descent philosophers. So that's why I'm thinking about it right now. And what they would do is universalize values about captivity and about exploitation and about, you know what I'm saying, this, and they'd be like, hold on now, you have no racial analysis on that. And this is where we get on the far. He said, white people of a European descent are fully human and are entrusted with the task of humanizing the rest of the world. This may occur through dehumanizing means such as slavery. The underlined part right here, I'm gonna read this sentence right here. However, such a view was not uncommon among thinkers like Kant and Hegel and Immanuel Kant, and I can't think of Hegel's first name, but these dudes are seen as like some of the fathers of philosophy within Western thought, or in Hegel's sense, because he ain't really seen as a pioneer or father of Western thought like Kant is, but Hegel is seen as a pioneer of Western thought in a way that they like got. You really can't even go to get a degree for philosophy without learning about these two dudes. Like, swear to God, I'm talking about, even if you took an intro class, they're going to tell you about Immanuel Kant and Hegel. Swear to God, they're going to get up in there. But Hegel's view of world history begins with a problematic assumption and is guided by questionable European values. A lot of the ways that we're taught about global conflict is taught through the worldview of the European values. Hegel's view of world history began with the problematic assumption and is guided by questionable European values. As Bernasconi points out, Hegel's view was not only the possible alternative. Indeed, the overtly racist view of both Hegel and Kant were challenged by some of the contemporaries. Meaning that a lot of the ways that we start to buy into Sigmund Freud or Immanuel Kant or any people that we crown as being the fathers of Western thought, that we never think about how those people were opposed also in their time, and we don't even acknowledge it. Second, the defenders of Hegel into Hegel, you feel me? I think I make sure I'm taking this right. Hegel was like the dialect, you know what I'm saying? I want to make sure I'm throwing this man's name around. It's like Hegelian thought. You know what I mean? That's what I learned this shit is. And Hegel is a German dude. It's relating to it's I'm trying to figure out how I can explain Hegelian thought, like the Hegelian dialect. I feel like a nerd today, goddamn. The Hegelian, the Hegelian dialect is a three-stage process of logical historical development, often described as thesis, antithesis, and synthesis, whereby contradictions, concepts within reality resolve to a much more different, complex truth. And I think about it as how we always had different dialects that compete for what it for talking about what is happening, and then that dialect is able to coalesce into power. Now, don't get me wrong, I never read a whole bunch of Hegel. I just got good at being able to beat it with talking about whiteness and getting into Afro pessimism. But you know, that's what we is. Shout out to you, Paul. I've been trying to build more over there on Substack. I mean, build more over there on Twitch, man. Shout out to you. Appreciate you, Paul. You know, shout out to, man, it's only one of y'all over there from Twitch, but thank you, Paul. I appreciate you being the only person over there on Twitch. You are appreciated for sure. Second, the defenders of Hegel never make the connection between Hegel's way of thinking about race in Africa and the unthinkable experiences of Africans who were victims of the transatlantic slave trade. They never take seriously the dehumanizing effects of slavery and racial domination. Their goal is to make whiteness invisible. That is, in the philosophy, there is no white perspective, but only the universal, impartial, disinterested view from nowhere. When I learned about whiteness, I learned about anthropology in a much more technical way, and I figured out anthropology is nothing but white people calling order to the world and being able to put themselves in this very narrator authority position where they're always being able to universalize their view from nowhere and tell the entire world how we should view some exotic place, some non-European value, non-European artifact, non-European discovery. And it's like they get to dictate the way in which the entire world views that. And I think this is how I started really taking in to whiteness and messing with George Yancey and Arnold Farr. And you feel me? I think I can't remember the first name, but last name was Healy. I remember the evidence I used to read when I was in college debate, man. But it say their goal is to make whiteness invisible. That is, in philosophy, there is no white perspective, but only the universal, impartial, and disinterested view from nowhere. However, for those who have been and are victims of racism, it is a it's a long-term effects. The whiteness of these interpreters is quite visible. Whiteness becomes visible in every aspect of a serious consideration of the problem of race and philosophy. See. And, you know, in debate, you used to have to give an alternative. So in educational fashion, and when I'm on professor mode, where I think it's important that I always try to give is not only a description of what the world is operating off, but also give you a prescription to deal with it. Arnold Farr says that philosophers of African descent have challenged the idea that philosophy, with its alleged ability to construct the view from nowhere, is capable of colorblind inquiry into the human condition. And philosophy's attempt to transcend the physical empirical boundaries for the purpose of discovering and disclosing some of the universal truth that cannot be determined by material conditions such as race, class, gender, and sexuality. Philosophy's own self-interest is very hold on, make sure I thought I was reading my alternative evidence. Right here. I'm sorry. I knew it was coming to the alternative evidence. You know, I think that I've been for 2026. I know that I'm good at talking about problems. I can get real poetic. I can get real articulate about how shit is fucked up. I'm now challenging myself to get into thinking about the alternatives and thinking about prescriptions and thinking about like solvency, thinking about, you know what I'm saying, resolutions. So in doing this, I'm trying to go back and remind myself of how I used to present the harms, the inherency, and then the solvency. That is the three components of what it means to have an affirmative argument. You feel me? An affirmative means you got to have, you know, what is the problem? What is the inherency? Okay, what is the impact of that inherency? What are the harms? Okay, what is your plan or the solvency that you're going to deal with the harms and deal with the inherency of what's going down? In this instance, I'm giving y'all the harms and the inherency of whiteness, white supremacy, and the invisibility and the power of invisibility when it comes to the way the Western world is structured. With this Mills evidence from 2004, this is Charles Mills, a professor of philosophy. Shout out to everybody in Chicago. This comes from his writing about racial exploitation and the wages of whiteness. I think Charles Mills is the person that wrote the racial social contract. White people talk about the social contract and about this, that, and the other, but you always, if you're a person of color, you always start like, hold on, how the hell y'all saying y'all had a social contract that was about morals and ethics, but y'all didn't allow for the enslaved Africans or for the colonized indigenous folks that y'all did? Y'all ain't get it that to him, right? Alternative is inclusive to their analysis, just forces them to account for white supremacy. And white supremacy, the concept of white supremacy is what I believe, or the mythology of white supremacy is what I believe is calling calling the site of power and rendering it visible because it wants to stay invisible. Philosophers have a distinctive role to play in analyzing white supremacy. Investigations and formulation at a higher level of abstraction would be invaluable. White supremacy has been sufficiently important as a social reality over the past 100 years. White supremacy has been sufficient. You know what? Before I get to reading this right here brings me to a point too. Is that when I'm dealing with white conservatives and they want to talk about the beginning of the KKK, and you know what I'm saying? Hey, shout out to you, TMF. I really appreciate you. Earth is living in a white man's image. Cook. For sure. And I think that this theory of whiteness, I believe, gives credence to how we're all forced to buy into the way that the white elite see the world. And if we don't, there are consequences. Right now, I think it's important to identify how white conservatives mystify white supremacist power that they're implicated in and trying to scapegoat it all on present day Democrats. Now, what I'm not saying is that present day Democrats are not also implicated in systems of white supremacy. What I do know is that the aha gotcha moment becomes when conservatives say, but the Democrats have started the KKK. It's Democrats the one that fought for slavery. If you can identify that the KKK is bad now and that slavery is bad now, or then, and KKK was bad then, you can acknowledge that me seeing a Confederate flag or seeing white sheets from the KKK that are current in the current Republican Party, and they don't want to talk about that, that's what I mean by invisibility. The same people that want to beat their chest, people don't take accountability. Black people always want to engage in their thug culture and don't want to talk about the things they do. And black people kill black people and they just don't. All these are deflections, man. This how they deflect. How the entire world is structured by their comfort. I speak English because of a whip and a chain. And I ain't talking about the shit the rappers rap about. My English dialect is a product of white supremacy and English enslavers and colonizers believing their way of life was more superior than my African ancestors. Insofar, I couldn't even tell you the language that we spoke. The white man's burden, white saviorhood, these are all recharacterization of domination that we get called out and make to feel bad when we call it out as that domination. Now you're just being an ungrateful Negro. Look at you. We give you good sleeps. We give you good eats. We let you niggas watch your football and your basketball. We even let you while you wear your Jordans. And you still being ungrateful? To me, that's what the white conservatives feel like. We gave you niggers all this. Y'all are ungrateful? Or you gonna be ungrateful? I'm taking everything. You was ungrateful with affirmative action. You were ungrateful with access to education. You were ungrateful with history. You were ungrateful with research. Oh yeah, give it all to me. You still complaining about America? Oh yeah, you complaining about America? You ain't getting shit then. Like an abusive parent. Just. Hey, thanks God is over. I don't know the internal link between you dropping these Bible verses what I'm talking about. I'll be interested in it. Shout out to you though. Just there because they didn't really care. Millennial and Gen Z though, not turning away from our empathy. White supremacy is also a lie. They want to uphold. We say more. And two, this is another point too to point out. I got a video coming out about the trick of time. about how whiteness obscures time to always say that we're too far away to talk about the violence that happened to niggas, and we too close, you feel me, to progress to talk about how far we got to go. At the same time, we always already close to talk about anything that made white folks feel in power. This is what Dr. Calvin Warren calls the trick of time. And me discussing the trick of time, it's funny to me that the Dixiecrats, the modern day Republicans, how the trick of time says that going back to talk about slavery and condemning America is too far in the past, but talking about how the Democrats started slavery or they started the KKK, that's not too far in the past. The last thing I say on this topic, on this subject, is this. A lot of ways that we are taught to think about neutrality and objectivity is what fosters the power of whiteness. Give you an example. When I was a college policy debater, the judge at the back of the room is who dictates who won the debate. And white folks believe they had such, and this is white liberals too, this is white liberals. White liberals believe they had such the ability to be neutral and objective that if they were debating or they were judging a roundabout race, only they had the ability to adjudicate the debate from a neutral and impartial level. And felt like if a black person judged a roundabout racial violence, that they did not have the capacity to evaluate the debate without being emotional. Even now, there are ways that a bunch of white people don't trust black folks being in positions of power because they believe that they're going to always be unfair. They don't have the capacity to be impartial. Even right now, when it comes to a black judge dealing with Donald Trump, it's always seen as an unfair thing by the very people that can be given evidence that the judge is moving not impartially and be saying, "No, you just want to play the race card." Black folks are believed to not have the impartial, we believe to never be neutral or objective. And maybe neutrality and objective is a myth. Maybe neutrality and objectivity never existed. The last thing I'll say too in articulating the alternative on whiteness, and I'm gonna go take me a lunch break and maybe I'll get back on live again, is whiteness wants us to universalize solutions. It wants us to think that when it comes to acknowledging harms and violence, there is a universal way to deal with it. And it ignores that solutions need to be created on the particular realities. And one of the examples I used to always use when I was in college policy debate is that the affirmative is engaging in a universal solution that says that we have one person that has a gunshot wound, we have another person that have a scrape, and we have another person that has cancer, and that the affirmative wants to give them all band-aids. That is a universal solution. And it wants to erase the particular harms and needs for these different instances of harm or violence. We know that you cannot give a band-aid to a gunshot wound. We know you cannot give a band-aid to a cancer patient, but we do know a band-aid might just help the healing of that scar. What I think universal solutions is on a more geopolitical scale, it says that the way in which white Americans and the way in which Europeans have said that the world should operate in the way that it's benefited them, it should benefit everybody. It's the reason why a lot of us were cool with unconstitutional things that's unlawful, especially under national law, being cool with it because it was happening in the name of democracy, name of justice. We experience and enjoy democracy and capitalism. We're going to give it to you too. It's going to be universal. Nah. And the contradiction of federalism is the founding fathers and even the white conservatives and founding fathers, the colonizers, the trailblazer colonizers of the world, goddamn, over America. Lost my train of thought again. See. Before your live ends, I tried finding you on Cash App, but could not. I made sure to spell it correctly when you get a chance and update it. A token of thanks would be, hey, appreciate you, man. I'm finna make sure I'm finna look it up real fast. I definitely appreciate that, man. Make sure I'm telling you right. I'm hungry in the mug, but I'm so hungry. See. Consciously. Bam, there it is. CW says, this is why logic is very important. Only logically based conversations break through reactionary takes, which are manipulative. And I believe that they always trying to manufacture us to give reactionary takes, to have knee-jerk reactions that justify doing some shit to us based off of us having a knee-jerk reaction. And I'm hoping, you know what I'm saying, that I'm hoping that by y'all coming in and tuning in to these live streams and, you know what I'm saying, watching these essay style videos I'm about to be leaning more into, that it fosters critical thinking and it fosters us being most stronger in our logic and more confident in our logic to be able to be like, man, stop playing in my face. You're trying to insult my intelligence, you know? TMF, thank you for coming to YouTube. I've always found you extremely knowledgeable. P.S. I'm a woman with no worries. I'm sorry, TMF. I apologize, TMF. I apologize. And you know, I know better. So I definitely apologize. Then just be assuming genders and shit. Definitely apologize to you and sorry for misgendering for sure. You know, definitely was not my intention. But education is elevation. Research over me search. I'm now finna go take me a little lunch break, put together the article, the newsletter that I got a lot of shit to put in the newsletter today because I referenced a whole bunch of things, from George Yancey to Farr to Hegel, to Mills to Immanuel Kant. So I'll be putting that in the newsletter that's available on my Substack channel. My Substack channel was Research Over Me Search. Shout out to everybody that's voted for me. You can vote every day until Friday for the NAACP Image Awards. And it's been real. It's Wednesday. It's now 12:30 Central. I got to get my kids off the bus in about 3 hours and 15 minutes. So we'll see what I do in this last little time, man. But shout out to y'all. Appreciate y'all again. Spontaneous percussion.